Hey, we're picking back up with editing pauses, and what we learned previously is that sometimes people make pauses between the words because they're trying to think of how to say them. We don't need those. We don't need to wait for them to think anymore. We can just have our listeners listen at a natural rate. Sometimes people skip right over pauses trying to rush because they're anxious or they don't want to lose train of their next thought, but listeners need those pauses between sentences to reflect on what was just said. That's why we need to edit pauses. Now for how, I have this clip right here. It has a series of needed pauses and bad pauses, so we can listen through and figure out how to edit. Okay, for zooming, you can zoom in like this. It's good to zoom in so you can see between each wave.
Don't think of shelter pets as discarded or damaged. We get some...
Okay, so she said an there. You're going to have to edit out the ums. We don't let ums air. But for editing the pause, which is what the took the place of, we're going to go to the nearest pause and highlight that and copy it, Control-C. And then we're going to zoom in a little closer, figure out where that is.
Damaged.
We is where the next sentence starts, so that's where our pause needs to be. So the pause just needs to replace the
We get some fantastic animals.
As you can hear, there's a little bit of damaged in my selection. So instead of trying to click and reselect, I'm just moving my selection over a little bit so it can encompass what I want it to. And I can drag this back here. Okay, I think that's it. Now that I have it highlighted and I've already copied my pause, I don't need to delete it and then paste in the pause. I can just paste it into the selected area. That way I don't have to do any extra selections. And I'm going to lower those levels. Now let's see how that sounds. It may sound cut off.
Or damaged. We get some...
Okay. Yeah, it does sound like there's a little bit of left. So I'm going to zoom in here. Cut a little bit more of that. See how that sounds.
We get some...
Now it sounds like this is a little off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the end of it. Actually, I'll highlight a bit more of the end of it. And then I'm going to go up to favorites and I'm going to fade it out.
Damaged. We get...
She still sounds cut off. So I'm going to cut a little of it off myself. And let's fade this out.
Damaged. We get...
Now it sounds like she has an awkward breath. So let's fade that in for a smoother transition.
Damaged. We get some...
I still hear a little hint of there, so I'm going to keep working.
Damaged. We get...
Maybe delete some of my pause here.
We get some...
It's starting to sound better, but it's good to zoom out so you can hear it in context.
Or damaged. We get some...
I think the issue is on the end of this still, so I'm going to fade that out.
We get some...
Yeah.
Damaged. We get some fantastic...
I still hear a little bit of though. I don't want any hint of Fade out. It's just about working.
We get some fantastic... We get some fantastic animals in. We get purebred.
Okay, here's a loud breath, so I'm going to highlight that. We don't want to just delete it, because remember, we're working on pauses. If we delete it, now we need a pause right there.
The animals in. We get purebred dogs.
She ran her two sentences together. So I'm going to reduce it, and I'll reduce it to a level where I can't really see it here, but I can still see it here. Because if you reduce it so low that you can't see it there at all, you can see there's all this background noise here. People can sometimes hear that background noise go in and out, so it's better not to get completely rid of all the audio.
Like animals in, we get pure...
And that's why I copy and paste my pauses instead of adding silence.
Animals in, we get purebred dogs in, and we get the best of the best mutts in as well.
Okay, here is one of her bad pause spots. She probably had that because she ran out of air. Because she rushed through other spots.
Yeah, the best of the best mutts in as well.
Or the gives us a hint that maybe she was having trouble thinking of what she needed to say next. But usually pause in front of an as well is not normal. So I'm going to highlight that and delete it. because we don't even want to pause there, so no reason to lower the audio.
And we get the best of the best mutts in as well. The cat.
It's sounding like that as well is a little awkward, isn't it? Because of the So I'm going to need to fade that in.
Mutts in as well. The cats and the dogs,
And of course, as well doesn't really add much, so we could just say the cats and the dogs.
And the dogs, come to the shelter.
We don't need the We'll work on edits like that later.
First, a little bit of training, sometimes with the dogs especially. So she's probably out hunting.
Okay.
Dogs, come to the shelter.
Come to the shelter is a new sentence, though. So I'm going to highlight this pause, copy it.
Come to the shelter. Come to the
And there's our come.
Cats and the dogs, come to the shelter first.
Okay, that's a harsh C, so we'll fade that in a little bit. You could see I highlighted and pasted my pause, but I deleted most of it because you want a little bit of space.
And the dogs, come to the shelter first.
But not too much.
First, a little bit of...
Okay, that's too much. It sounds like a hesitation, so I'm going to delete that. How you know the appropriate length of your pause is you just have to have a feel for it. What does it sound like is natural in conversation? And so you need to think of mainly, do I feel like I'm impatient? Do I feel like I'm waiting on her? Do I feel like she's taking too long? Or do I feel like she's rushed? Do I feel like she didn't breathe? Do I feel like she didn't stop? Those are the things you're thinking of. But if you're having trouble just thinking that through on your own, you could always look at pauses nearby. So see, this is kind of a short pause compared to this, and this is a longer pause compared to this. So just try to make the pauses similar lengths to what's nearby. Another thing you could do is you could try to, between each sentence, make sure your pauses can fit a head nod or the word beat.
Shelter first,
beat.
A little bit of training, sometimes with the dogs especially.
Beat.
So she...
Okay, sometimes with the dogs especially needs...
Training.
So...
Sometimes
modifies. Now I come to this way, the words flow together, but this usually makes an S sound. So I know that if I put it right here, that's going to be times. So this is where sometimes begins. And I'm going to shorten that pause because it's kind of long.
A little bit of training, sometimes with the dogs.
Of course, that S is abrupt, so we're going to fade in.
Training, sometimes with the dog.
I hear a snort. That's something else that you'll have to learn to edit. Fade in. Okay.
Sometimes with the dogs especially. So she's probably out hunting or finding food, and she will come back to those kittens. I know people are trying to do the right thing.
Okay, we are so close. This is a loud breath. Drop that.
So she's...
Okay, we know this is fine, so I'm just going to skip ahead.
We'll come back to those kittens.
That's a hard C.
We'll come back to those kittens.
With a noise. Where she says, I know, should be a new sentence.
Kittens, I know. Kittens, I know. I know.
Okay, so here we have another S. You can see it right there. And so this is probably where the I know begins, but I'll just put my cursor there and play.
I know.
Okay, so that is the I know, so I'm going to paste that pause in there. And then I'm going to delete. It's good when you copy a pause to make sure there's no noise in it. Like if there's a up and down thing like that, that shows there's some noise in it. So you may want to get another pause or reduce the audio on your pause so it doesn't have a sound.
Kittens, I know people are trying to do the right thing.
Okay.
Kittens, I know people are trying...
Sounds abrupt. Maybe fade out the S.
Those kittens, I know people...
Hear a little bit of S on here, so I'm just going to cut that. And fade into that. So fading in and out helps if it sounds abrupt and choppy.
Those kittens, I know people are...
And it does. So cut that S down a little bit more. Fade it out.
Those kittens, I know people are trying to do...
And maybe the pause is a little too short. So I'm going to copy and paste from my own pause.
I know people are trying to do the right thing.
Okay. So hopefully that can help you with editing your pauses. Just copy and paste pauses which don't have much noise, like that's noise. So look for a pause without much noise in it. Copy it, paste it where you need it, and then if it sounds bad, fiddle around, working with just the first and last syllables of the words in front of it, actually the first and last sounds. fading them in or out just to make a easy transition.